Decoded.
Welcome back to Book Decoded, everyone. Today, we're going to be looking at Exercised by Daniel Lieberman. I know what you might be thinking. Another book about exercise. But this one really flips the script in some really surprising ways.
It does, yeah. Lieberman takes us on this fascinating journey through, evolutionary biology, anthropology, and a little bit of history, all to understand our relationship with physical activity. And it's not even really just about how to get fit. It's about why we move, how we evolved to move, and what all that means for us today.
Okay, so we know Lieberman. He's this Harvard evolutionary biology professor.
Yeah.
But he's also got this awesome nickname, the Barefoot Professor. This guy is serious about running, even does some of his research barefoot. But here's where things get really interesting. The book argues that we as humans are actually designed to be as inactive as possible.
Yeah. From an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. For most of human history, energy conservation was key for survival. Our ancestors couldn't just swing by the grocery store or order takeout. Every calorie burned had to count towards finding food, shelter, and, passing on their genes. So our bodies evolved to prioritize rest and avoid unnecessary movement.
So you're telling me all this time we've been pushing ourselves to exercise, we've actually been battling our own evolutionary programming. That's kind of a mind-blowing concept.
It is, and Lieberman brings up some great examples to show this. He looks at modern-day hunter-gatherer populations, like the Hadza in Tanzania. And while they're definitely more active than the average person in a modern industrialized society, they still spend a considerable amount of time resting. Their lifestyle really revolves around conserving energy, making every movement purposeful.
Makes me feel a little better about my weekend Netflix binges. But speaking of energy conservation, didn't Lieberman also talk about the Minnesota starvation experiment? That study seemed to back up this whole design for inactivity idea.
Right. Absolutely. The Minnesota starvation experiment really highlights how deeply ingrained this instinct for energy conservation is within us. When our bodies are deprived of calories, they go into this incredible energy-saving mode. They prioritize essential functions and minimize physical activity. It's a powerful reminder that our bodies are incredibly adaptable, designed to survive even when there's scarcity.
Okay, so if we're wired for rest, how on earth did we end up with this whole exercise is a must mentality?
Well, that's where things get fascinating. Historically, exercise wasn't something people did for fun or even for fitness. It was primarily tied to survival, think farming, hunting, preparing for battle. These activities demanded physical exertion, the concept of exercise, as a leisure activity, something you do just for health and well-being. It's a pretty recent invention.
So it was the shift to more sedentary lifestyles, brought about by industrialization and technology that kind of forced us to invent exercise as we know it today. It's almost like we created a problem and then had to engineer a solution for it.
It's a little ironic, isn't it? But it highlights how adaptable humans are and how our relationship with physical activity is constantly evolving.
Now, speaking of evolution, the book delves into some of the specific physical activities that humans have evolved to excel at, like running. It turns out we're not just couch potatoes after all. We've got some serious endurance capabilities.
We do. Lieberman argues that humans evolved to be incredible endurance runners. In fact, he suggests that we could even outrun horses over long distances, especially in hot conditions. Our biomechanics, like our long tendons and efficient stride length, all contribute to this fascinating ability.
Like we were born to run marathons. And speaking of pushing our limits, he also mentioned this crazy hunting technique called persistence hunting, right?
Yeah. Persistence hunting is a truly remarkable example of human endurance and strategy. Imagine our ancestors literally running their prey to exhaustion, sometimes over many miles and hours. It really shows how vital endurance was.
In our evolutionary past, maybe those weekend 5Ks aren't so daunting after all. But what about the whole running is bad for your knees thing? It's something I've always wondered about.
Yeah, that's another myth that Lieberman tackles. He argues that running itself isn't inherently bad for your knees. He suggests that a lot of the overuse injuries we see today stem from modern running practices. Things like improper form, or even our footwear choices.
Interesting. So maybe our ancestors were onto something with their minimalist approach to footwear. Okay, so we've talked about our innate inclination toward inactivity, the rise of exercise as a separate activity, and our surprising endurance capabilities.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here, and it seems like it's time to bust some more fitness myths.
You're right on the money. Up next, let's tackle the myth of the athletic savage. This is where things get really interesting. We often romanticize, our hunter-gatherer ancestors as these super athletes
Yeah.
with rippling muscles. But Lieberman challenges that image. While they were undoubtedly strong and fit, their lifestyle didn't necessarily lead to, the kind of muscle mass we see with, modern-day bodybuilders.
So you're saying our cave-dwelling ancestors weren't exactly sporting six-pack abs, but I thought they were constantly battling wild animals and rivals. Wouldn't that build some serious muscle?
Well, it's a natural assumption, but the reality is a little more nuanced. Lieberman points out that humans actually evolved to fight differently than, say, apes. We rely more on proactive aggression, strategic thinking, and using weapons rather than just brute force.
So it's more about brains over brawn. When it comes to human combat, we outsmart our opponents rather than overpower them.
Precisely. We leverage our intelligence, our planning, and our tools to gain an advantage. And when it comes to physical confrontations, well, let's just say, humans have a history of resorting to weapons rather than hand-to-hand combat.
Makes sense. Who wants to wrestle a saber-toothed tiger? But where do sports fit into all of this? They seem so focused on physical prowess, especially in the modern world.
Well, that's the modern lens that we view them through. But Lieberman suggests that sports might have actually evolved as a way to channel and control aggression. It's a way to practice combat skills, hone strategic thinking, and even establish social hierarchies within a group, all within a structured and regulated framework.
So sports are like a civilized outlet for our primal instincts. It's fascinating to think about how a football game or a wrestling match might have roots in these ancient survival strategies.
Yeah, it really highlights the complex interplay between our biology, our behavior, and the cultures that we create. Now, shifting gears a bit, the book also explores the role of exercise in the aging process, and there are some genuinely encouraging insights there.
Now, that's something I want to hear more about.
Well, Lieberman emphasizes how crucial exercise is for slowing down age-related decline, particularly for our muscles and bones. And he presents a couple of fascinating hypotheses to explain this. One is called the active grandparent hypothesis. It suggests that humans evolved to live long, active lives, well past their reproductive years. And a big part of that was to help care for their grandchildren.
So grandparenting is more than just spoiling the grandkids and telling stories. It's actually woven into our evolutionary history.
Exactly. Grandparents played, and in many cultures still play, a vital role in childcare, food gathering, passing on knowledge, all things that require continued physical activity and engagement.
Okay, that makes sense. What about that second hypothesis?
That's a costly repair hypothesis, and it's all about how physical activity triggers the body's repair mechanisms. Basically, exercise creates, a bit of controlled stress or damage, and in response, our bodies get better at repairing and maintaining themselves. This, in turn, helps to mitigate the wear and tear that comes with aging.
So it's like giving our bodies a regular tune-up. A little bit of stress now leads to greater resilience later in life. I like the sound of that. But let's be honest, getting motivated to exercise can be a struggle sometimes, especially when our biology is whispering, conserve energy, stay on the couch.
You're not alone in that feeling. Lieberman acknowledges that our natural tendency towards inactivity can make voluntary exercise a challenge. He emphasizes the importance of finding ways to make exercise feel more necessary, but crucially, more enjoyable.
So ditching the grueling workouts and the rigid routines in favor of activities that we genuinely enjoy.
Exactly. Whether it's dancing, hiking, playing a sport, or simply finding ways to incorporate more movement into your daily life. The key is to find something sustainable. And Lieberman highlights how social support, group activities, and structured programs can also boost motivation and make exercise more appealing.
It's about finding that sweet spot where our evolutionary drive for efficiency meets our modern need for physical activity. Now, I know there's no one-size-fits-all approach, but did Lieberman offer any insights into what kind of exercise might be most beneficial?
He did, and his recommendations are refreshingly balanced. He advocates for a mix of moderate-intensity aerobic exercise, some strength training, and high-intensity interval training, or HIIT.
So a bit of everything, rather than going all in on one type of exercise?
That's the idea. It's about finding a mix that works for you, that you can stick with over time, and that you, most importantly, enjoy.
Great advice. It seems like we've covered a lot of ground here. From debunking fitness myths to understanding the evolution of exercise and getting practical tips on motivation. But while we've talked about the need for exercise, in the modern world, I'm curious to know how our ancestors stayed healthy without gyms and fitness trackers. What can we learn from their lifestyle?
That's a great question, and it leads us to a crucial aspect of the book, the link between exercise and disease prevention. It's a topic that has direct relevance to our lives today. When we talk about exercise and disease prevention, it's easy to fall into this trap of thinking of exercise as this magic bullet.
Right, like if I just, run enough miles, I can outrun any health risk.
Exactly. And while Lieberman does say, acknowledge the incredible health benefits of physical activity, he cautions against oversimplifying things. He sees exercise as a powerful preventative measure, but not a cure-all.
So no matter how many marathons I run, I can't totally eliminate the risk of disease.
That's right. But what's fascinating is how Lieberman breaks down the specific ways exercise impacts our risk. For various chronic diseases, let's take type 2 diabetes, for example. Did you know that back in the day, doctors used to diagnose diabetes by tasting their patient's urine?
Wait, really? That's a bit surprising.
It sounds strange, but it's true. If the urine was sweet, it indicated high blood sugar, which is a key sign of diabetes. And this highlights a crucial point. Type 2 diabetes, while influenced by genetics, is largely triggered by lifestyle factors.
So things like diet, stress, lack of physical activity, all play a role.
Precisely. These factors can create this perfect storm that disrupts the body's ability to regulate blood sugar. But here's the good news. Exercise can be a powerful tool in managing and even preventing type 2 diabetes.
Okay, so exercise helps balance blood sugar. What about heart disease? Considering it's a leading cause of death, I'm especially curious about that.
Yeah, this is where exercise really shines. Regular physical activity helps lower blood pressure, improve cholesterol levels, strengthen the heart muscle, and even promote the growth of new blood vessels. It's like giving your cardiovascular system a complete overhaul.
That's reassuring to know, but what about cancer? Is there a connection there too?
There is. It's a complex one. While exercise can't guarantee that you'll never get cancer, Lieberman presents compelling evidence that it can significantly reduce your risk.
How so?
Well, exercise impacts several key pathways that contribute to cancer development. It helps regulate hormones, boost the immune system, reduce inflammation, and even promote DNA repair. It's like having an army of microscopic defenders working to keep those rogue cells in check.
Wow, I didn't realize exercise had such a multifaceted impact on cancer risk. Are there any other diseases Lieberman covers in the book?
He also explores the link between exercise and Alzheimer's disease, which is a growing concern. And while the research is still evolving, there's promising evidence that physical activity can protect brain health and potentially reduce the risk of developing this devastating condition.
So exercise is good for our bodies and our brains. It's like the ultimate multitasker.
It really is. You know what strikes me? As we wrap up this discussion on exercise and disease, we often approach exercise as this chore, something we have to do for our health.
By taking our medicine?
Yeah. But Lieberman invites us to shift our perspective. What if we embraced movement as a natural and enjoyable part of being human? What if we found activities that light us up, that make us feel alive, that connect us to others? That's where the real magic lies.
So it's less about rigid routines.
Yeah.
And more about rediscovering the joy of movement.
Exactly. If our ancestors could stay healthy and thrive without gyms and fitness trackers, maybe you can learn something from their lifestyle. Find ways to integrate movement into your daily life. Reconnect with nature. Wow. Prioritize play and social connection. And listen to your body's cues.
It's a powerful reminder that exercise doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a celebration of what our bodies were designed to do. So get out there, move in ways that bring you joy, and see what happens. And for a deeper dive into the fascinating science of physical activity, I highly recommend checking out Exercised by Daniel Lieberman. It's a real eye-opener. That's it for this episode of Book Decoded. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive
into a thought-provoking read. Until then, keep those minds curious and those bodies moving.